Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors.
Today, we will be discussing Book 4, Chapter 19 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it's most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Just know that Kamraun and I know that this series is the best fantasy story ever written, and we're approaching it from a purely fanboy point of view. We'll be providing no literary critique. We'll continue to simply marvel at the light and diverse works of Mr. Erikson.
We'll be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning, today's episode contains descriptions of extreme violence and is not recommended for children. So there you go.
Sorry. Yeah, just keep it simple.
That's all I got.
Yeah. Our show's listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
And also, we would really like to hear from you. And we really mean that. Not like every other podcast that says, hey, we'd really like to hear from you. We are extremely sincere when we say we'd like to hear from you. Well, I do. Kamraun, maybe not so much, but send any feedback or comments that you've got to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
You going to throw me under the bus like that?
I love when I catch you off guard.
Who monitors this inbox? Kamraun monitors this inbox.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
I do want to hear from you.
Yes, he does. Folks, I'm just teasing.
All right, Chapter 19, Part 1. We begin the chapter with the chain of dogs. In the local Can-Eld dialect, it would come to be called Mesh Arn, Tho Ledan, the day of pure blood. The river Vathar's mouth gushed blood and corpses into the Dojal-hating sea for close to a week. To the fisher folk plying those waters, that time was called the season of sharks, and more than one net was cut away before a ghastly harvest was pulled aboard. The horror spread like a stain outward, from tribe to tribe, from one city to the next, and from that revulsion was born fear among the natives of 7 cities. A Malazan fleet was on its way, commanded by a woman hard as iron. What happened at Vathar Crossing was a whetstone to hone her deadly edge. Tavora described as hard as iron. That's quite a fitting description based on what we've come to know of her thus far.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I look forward to getting to know her more.
Yes. A very complex character, for sure.
Yeah. And especially this go around as you and I dig so deep into it. I'm really looking forward to getting to know her because I've always liked her character, but I think we will come to a deeper appreciation on this read through of her, just like we did of Perrin, her brother.
Yes. Yet Corbolodam was anything but finished. The cedar forest south of the river rose on tiered steps of limestone, the trader track crazed with switchbacks and steep, difficult slopes. And the deeper into the wood the train went, the more ancient and uncanny it became. Duiker led his mare by the reins, stumbling as rocks turned underfoot. Alongside him clattered a wagon, sagging with wounded soldiers. Corporal List sat on the buckboard, his switch snapping the dusty, sweat-runneled backs of the pair of oxen laboring at their yokes. The losses at Vathar Crossing were a numb litany in Duiker's mind. Over 20,000 refugees, a disproportionate number of children among them. Less than 500 able fighters remained in the Foolish Dog clan, and the other 2 clans were almost as badly mauled. 700 soldiers of the 7th were dead, wounded, or lost. A scant dozen sappers remained on their feet, and but a score of marines. 3 noble families had been lost, an unacceptable attrition, this latter count, as far as the council was concerned. And Sormo Enath, within the one man, 8 elder warlocks, a loss of not just power, but knowledge, experience, and wisdom, a blow that had driven the Wiccans to their knees. I had a few things to note here. First of all, that casualty count is out of control. 20,000 refugees. That was roughly a third of them, right? It wasn't around 60,000 refugees total.
I think so, yeah.
60 to 80, somewhere in there. I wonder how many of those children that were disproportionately lost was due to trampling in the panicked rush.
Well, a large portion would most assuredly be kids because of just the size. And also the children are going to be the hardest hit by this hard living of malnutrition and thirst, and will be weaker than some of them, are less hardy and probably suffer first. And so they might go under first. And like you say, we might lose a lot more due to that them being weakened and not being able to fight back when they're being pushed under and trampled to death.
Right. The second thing was for them to lose 700 soldiers from the 7th at this stage is a heavy, heavy loss. I mean, only 20 Marines left, 12 sappers, losing another 700 or so. Oh, man.
Yeah, this is really, really tough loss. I mean, a really crippling loss. But the surprising fact is not that we've lost these people, but the fact that they made it this far.
True.
You know, this whole everything that has been done has been against every odd in the entirety of creation in this universe.
They've done really well. How many armies have they gone up against?
I don't know.
2 joined together, right?
Yeah.
Corbola Dom came in to support the other mage that was leading the other one. I forget what his name was.
Yeah, I forget the name too. But yeah, this is why this book is so indelibly stamped on us, because all of these books have supremely human efforts that make it so entertaining in this world of unhuman things and inhuman things. And it's always this kind of stuff that we gravitate towards, seeing people succeed, even though it's hard and even though it's been a survival tale and harsh, it's still very wow. It's the best part of it is the human struggle.
Yes. The third and final thing that I noted out of that last chapter was Sormo Inath containing within him 8 elder warlocks. And this changes my perception of what he is exactly, because I had always thought when they said it took 8 crows to carry his soul during his last reincarnation, that somehow showed the magnitude of what that soul was capable of.
Right.
And this almost makes it sound like he is an amalgamation of 8 different people within one. Did you take it that same way?
Yes, it will. That is the thing here with the Wiccans in particular that I think stands out with them is that their warlocks are different. They're not Warren users, or they don't seem to be Warren users that I'm aware of. They're differently magicked with a K. I've always taken that to be the case with the warlocks of the Wiccans, as that they are like. I'm sorry, I may be jumping the gun on that one.
It has been 0 days since there has been.
Okay. There we go. Well, now that it's out of the bag, it's like court. We're open to discuss now. So I've taken that to be the thing with the Wiccans, in particular with the Wiccans. Nobody else other than is he going to do a Wiccan trilogy? If he doesn't, man, Mr. Erikson, you can need to leave this plea in there. Please make a trilogy at minimum.
Earlier that day, at a time when the train had ground to a temporary halt, Lull had joined Duiker to share some rations. Few words passed between them to start, as if the events of Vathar Crossing were something not to be talked about, even as they spread like a plague through every thought and echoed ghost-like behind every scene around them, every sound that rose from the camp. Lull slowly put away the remnants of their meal. Then he paused, and Duiker saw the man studying his own hands, which had begun trembling. Duiker looked away, surprised at the sudden shame that swept through him. And you hate to see it. Lull's been through a lot, given how he's been wounded and seeing the significant amount of his soldiers that he's lost as well. It couldn't have helped his mental condition.
Yeah. Well, that and just all of this and them all being deprived of everything, rest, food, water. And yeah, I'm like you. I just hate seeing Lull done this way because I've really grown to love him so much through the chain of dogs, man. Lull's been really cool, man.
Yeah. Name a Marine you don't like thus far.
Yeah, that's pretty difficult.
I was trying to think. I think there's a couple of them that have some pretty bad attitudes that we meet later.
Technically, you could say Corbola Dom because he was not a Marine, but he was a fist or a high fist, so he was on our side at one point. Or he's on the Malazan side.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the Marines specifically.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We know that there are some captains that have, and some new sergeants or whatnot that have got their throats cut. So there must be some ones they didn't care for. But remember when it's always looked like Kalam's like, I didn't kill that guy. I promise. I didn't kill that man.
Duiker saw List wrapped in sleep on the buckboard, trapped within his prison of dreams, and thought, I could in mercy awaken the lad, yet the power for knowledge has mastered me. Cruelty comes easy these days. Lull sighed after a moment, hastily completing the task. He said, "Do you find the need to answer all this, historian? All those tomes you've read, those other thoughts from other men, other women, other times. How does a mortal make answer to what his or her kind are capable of? Does each of us, soldier or no, reach a point when all that we've seen, survived, changes us inside, irrevocably changes us? What do we become then? Less human or more human? Human enough or too human?" Man, that's like a philosophical question. You could sit
Yeah.
and chew on that for a couple of days, probably.
Well, it's not like we haven't been discussing this for like since mankind has been around. I'm assuming these are some of the those are some lifelong questions there.
Yeah.
Lowell has been this a couple times too. Lowell has brought out some hardcore. Oof, that old boy is struggling with a lot of lifting there mentally lately. Plus, he's pulled out some heavy thought before. It's been like, wow.
Yeah. Durka was silent for a long minute, his eyes on the dirt that surrounded the boulder upon which he sat. Then he cleared his throat and said, "Each of us has his own threshold, friend. Soldier or no, we can only take so much before we cross over into something else. As if the world has shifted around us, though it's only our way of looking at it. A change of perspective, but there's no intelligence to it. You see but do not feel, or you weep yet look upon your own anguish as if from somewhere else, somewhere outside. It's not a place for answers, Lull, for every question has burned away. More human or less human, that's for you to decide." Lull said, "Surely it has been written of, by scholars, priests, philosophers?" There we go. Durga smiled down at the dirt and said, "Efforts have been made, but those who themselves have crossed that threshold, well, they have few words to describe the place they've found, and little inclination to attempt to explain it. As I said, it's a place without intelligence, a place where thoughts wander, formless, unlinked, lost." Lull said, "Lost. I am surely that." Duerker said, "Yet you and I, Lull, we are lost late in our lives. Look upon the children and despair." That's a difficult thought. You hate to see anyone experience what everybody on the chain of dogs is going through, but it's infinitely worse to think of children not being able to live out their life with an innocent childhood.
Yeah. I mean, and we've mentioned it already a little bit here about these, these kids have spent the better part of a year on the run. I mean, talk about a rough, hard, that's not a childhood. That's survival. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's not, I mean, some kids unfortunately, some kids do have that for a childhood. But yeah, these kids, I feel really bad for them.
I was listening to a podcast recently. It was a Lebanese lady. She was pretty famous. I think she used to be a anchor on Al Jazeera. She was saying that when she was 13, there was a war going on. I can't remember which conflict it was in Lebanon. And she had to live for a year in a basement because they were afraid of getting killed by their own government. And then they had to flee to Israel at one point because they were Lebanese Christians. I think it was something to do with the Palestinians had radicalized some of the people in the country. And so there was like a cleansing going on of the Christians, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But that kind of reminds me of this. She was just talking about her experience of how they'd have to go out, sneak around to get food, worried about getting shot, that kind of stuff. So I imagine it would be similar.
Yeah, very similar.
Lull said, "How to answer this? I must know, Duerker, else I go mad." Duerker said, "Sleight of hand." Lull asked, "What?" Duerker said, "Think of the sorcery we've seen in our lives, the vast, unbridled, deadly power we've witnessed unleashed, driven to awe and horror. Then think of a trickster, those you saw as a child, the games of illusion and artifice they could play with their hands, and so bring wonder to your eyes." Lull was silent, motionless. Then he rose and asked, "And there's my answer?" Duerker said, "It's the only one I can think of, friend. Sorry if it's not enough." Lull said, "No, old man, it's enough. It has to be, doesn't it?" Duerker said, "Aye, that it does." Lull repeated, "Sleight of hand." Duerker nodded and said, "Ask for nothing more, for the world, this world, won't give it." Lull asked, "But where will we find such a thing?" Duerker rose and said, "Unexpected places." Somewhere ahead, shouts rose and the convoy resumed its climb once more. Duerker continued, "If you fight both tears and a smile, you'll have found one." Lull said, "Later, historian." Duerker said, "Aye." He watched Lull set off back toward his company of soldiers and wondered if all he'd said, all he'd offered to the man, was nothing but lies. The possibility returned to him now, hours later, as he trudged along the trail. One of those random, unattached thoughts that were coming to characterize the blasted scape of his mind. Returned, lingered a moment, then drifted away and was gone. The journey continued, beneath clouds of dust and a few remaining butterflies. Corbollo Dom pursued, sniping at the train's mangled tail, content to await better ground before another major engagement. Perhaps even he quailed at what Vathar Forest had begun to reveal. Among the tall cedars there were trees of some other species that had turned to stone. Gnarled and twisted, the petrified wood embraced objects that were themselves fossilized. The trees held offerings and had, long ago, grown around them. Duerker well recalled the last time he had seen such things, in what had been a holy place in the heart of an oasis, just north of Hisar. That sight had revealed ram's horns locked in the wrapped crooks of branches, and there were plenty of those here as well, although they were the least disquieting of Vathar's offerings. And a reminder that those ram skulls had been at the location where Duerker went into the warren with Sormo, and they got attacked by all the divers and Soul Taken.
I kind of almost forgotten that this is the same book. There's so much is going on in this book. Such an amazing book, dude.
Yeah, we only have about 100 pages left after we finish this chapter. I think it's about 120 pages. So we are not rapidly, as rapidly as a slug, closing in.
Yeah, we're rapidly approaching, as far as we're concerned, the end of this book. I think it's a better statement.
Mm-hmm. Duerker thought, Talan Imas, no room for doubt. Their undead faces stare out at us from all sides, skulls and withered faces peering out from wreaths of crystallized bark, the dark pits of their eyes tracking our passage. This is a burial ground, not of the flesh and blood forebears of the Talan Imas, but of the deathless creatures themselves. Lists visions of ancient war. We see here its aftermath. Crumpled platforms were visible as well. Stone latticework perched amidst branches that had once grown around them, closing up the assembled bones like the fingers of stone hands. Duerker thought, at the war's end, the survivors came here, carrying those comrades too shattered to continue, and made of this forest their eternal home. The souls of the Talan Imas cannot join Hood, cannot even flee their prisons of bone and withered flesh. One does not bury such things. That sentence of earthen darkness offers no peace. Instead, let those remnants look out from their perches upon one another, upon the rare mortal passages on this trail. I think this may be the first time we've found out that the Talan Imas don't have their souls collected by Hood when they die.
Right.
And it gives a little more context around the sacrifice they made to make the vow to become a Talan Imas.
I had forgotten this fact, and wow, that's kind of a large fact to forget. Because part of me, we know they can become dust. Why can't someone assist them? It's like, hey, can we at least help you to become dust, and you can at least ride the wind? Maybe it's better than being stuck in a tree where you're just, I'd rather that than, I don't know. There's got to be worse places to be stuck, like I said, underground. Be really bad. Mm-hmm. Be buried and kind of alive for those folks.
I guess it's a complex situation because when I think of going to dust, it's going to get spread all over the place, and maybe the consciousness can't keep it all together.
That may be it.
I don't know. But again, this is a completely hypothetical situation.
Yes. So, I don't know. Well, they're very enigmatic. I mean, and I don't think we learn a whole lot more about them through the series. We learned about individuals, but I don't recall learning a whole lot about them or the vow, or I always see them with a lot of pity, even though they themselves are pitiless killers. I kind of pity them in some weird way.
Yeah, they've given up a lot, and those that we've met, well, I mean, we've met Tool so far, right? That's the only one we've really known. Well, we did encounter a couple in the warren with the Solanda, right? But didn't really get to know them very well.
And one sacrificed himself there, and one made a very valiant sacrifice.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Sorry, that's
we
right.
Thought so for a couple paragraphs, but then we find out that there's a head missing that could have potentially been used, which would be, man, if Eternal Torment. That was. If Eternal Torment aboard the Solanda wasn't bad enough, permanent torture by closing a rent without volunteering to do so is another level of dirty.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Because first off, yeah, it's bad enough that you've been forced to be an eternal rower, so your body's still working down there. Maybe
Yes.
it could still be
Oh no,
rolling.
it had died. The one body had
Did the body
died.
die?
That's how they confirmed.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I was gonna say that would be double duty. That would be
Oh
awful. It's
no, that's too much.
like,
So
oh.
back to this thing about what happens to the Talani mass when they die. The thought of looking at the same vista for all time instead of being buried in darkness is an interesting one. Because when I think of being coherent but unable to do anything but think, I would think that the lack of agency would be quite an adjustment to make, especially after being alive for hundreds of thousands of years, potentially.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of Dune reference number one for me coming up. It's kind of like the cogitators from the Dune prequels. Remember those guys stuck in it's very similar. But those guys volunteered for that duty. Well, I guess the Talani Mass technically did too. So,
Right.
But that's not a pleasant thought for me. I'm sorry. I've watched Altered States, and there's a movie actually called Brain Dead. It's an old Bill Pullman movie where it's like it's an altered reality kind of type of movie, and what's real, what's not real. And okay, this movie's like 35 years old, folks. So if I give a spoiler here at the end, shame on you for not watching this weird, wonderfully strange movie called Brain Dead. But it turns out basically the whole thing is like he is a brain in a jar.
Oh.
Through the whole dadgum movie. So it's like, oh no, it's like that's terrible. It's like it's just like
it's like the Matrix, effectively.
Yeah, exactly. But not knowing, but not knowing that you're in the Matrix.
Yeah. I've never really thought about this before, but on the topic of the vow with the Talani Mass, to think that everybody was equally enthusiastic to jump on board this train, I don't think that's possible. You think of the breadth of humanity, you're going to have some people that are always negative, and some people that react to peer pressure. They do what everybody else is doing.
Oh, yeah. That's what a majority of it is. I'm assuming it's a large so the Talani Mass, you don't want to do drugs around these guys or anything because everyone's going to fall on board with these guys.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is you would have to think that there's a certain number of them that regret having taken the vow.
Oh, there's a lot of them. I think that we're introduced to some later in the series.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't really thought about it in the context of the breadth of personalities that could exist within a people.
And here's the thing that Erikson does that other writers do not do that cover immortals or supposedly undead peoples. They talk about, a couple hundred years, oh, woe is me. These guys are 300,000 years old. And there's people older than that in this universe. But these guys are about 300,000. And man, there's got to be a lot of time built up for regret.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the more that we learn about them, they're not, because when we're first introduced to them, I think of them as kind of like mindless undead, and they're not that. We're clearly shown that they're not when you meet Tool. Yeah, I love Tool, man.
Mm-hmm.
He's a beloved character for me. Yeah, there's got to be lots of time built up for regret, especially if they become unbound. Is that what happens to them? Is that what happened to Tool? He's unbound or something like that?
Well, that's because all of his clan died, so he has no one to share the vow with.
Does that mean he now, instead of sharing things, he now has time to think and mourn and regret? So maybe sharing wasn't so bad, but when you lose everybody due to attrition or whatever that goes on with these guys in their Jag Hut wars, then all of a sudden he's got time to think for himself. Is that kind of how you take that?
That's a good point, because there is that group mind that they communicate with each other telepathically. So I guess maybe they can process stuff as a group and enforce some type of attitude, if you will.
Enforcement,
it's like, with the program, you're part of the crew, or, you're going to be with us, because Tool was talking about some of the freedoms that he has now that he doesn't have to answer to them.
Yeah, so it's like he's free to think for himself almost. Like he hasn't been thinking for himself for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to explore that more as we get more exposure to other Talani Mass.
Yeah, and maybe these Talani graveyards aren't maybe that shouldn't be something to be afeared, at least if you were that race. It's like at least they have some communion with each other, possibly, if they were close to each other. So there was not this cut off feeling So maybe it wouldn't be just as terrible as just complete aloneness or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's real curious. Just brings up some great questions.
Imagine looking at somebody that annoys you for
I,
eternity.
I was just thinking about that. What if it's like just the guy that you just, that's not this guy. Oh my gosh, not this
Anybody
guy.
but this guy.
Anybody but this guy. It's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, hey, buddy. It's like,
Somebody had to be there.
yeah. And it's got to be the guy that's the annoying, hey, guy, how you,
Yeah,
man?
always
Hey,
permanently
we're
in a
stuck
good mood.
together. Yeah, we're stuck together. Isn't this great? I'm going to kill myself. If I could kill myself, oh my gosh, I can't kill myself.
Yeah, one only gets to see the sunrise, one only gets to see the sunset. He's like, I wish you could see this sunrise. It's so beautiful. He's like, I can't turn around, dude. It's just
I'm sorry, that's awesome.
missed opportunity there.
Yes. Oh.
Moving along.
Oh.
List saw far too clearly, his visions delivering him deep into a history better left lost. Knowledge had beaten him down, Duerker thought, as it does us all, when delivered in too great a measure. Yet I hunger still. Cairns had begun appearing, heaps of boulders surmounted with totemic skulls. List had said, not barrows, sites of engagement, the various clans, wherever the Jagut turned... Sorry.
Wow, that's a hard one. I completely forgot about that one.
Wherever the Jagut turned from flight and lashed out. The day was drawing to a close when they reached the final height, a broad, jumbled basolith that seemed to have shed its limestone coat. The exposed bedrock deeply hued the color of wine. Flat, treeless stretches were crowded with boulders set out in spirals, ellipses, and corridors. Cedars were replaced by pines, and the number of petrified trees diminished. Duerker and List had been traveling in the last third of the column, the wounded shielded by a battered rearguard of infantry. Once the last of the wagons and the few livestock that remained cleared the slope and made level ground, the footmen quickly gained the ridge, squads scattering to various vantage points and potential strongholds commanding the approach. List halted his wagon and set the brake, then rose from the buckboard, stretched and looked down at Duerker with haunted eyes. Duerker said, better lines of sight up here, anyway. List said, always has been. If we make for the head of the column, we'll come to the first of them. Duerker asked, the first of what? The blood leaving List's face bespoke another vision flooding his mind, a world and a time seen through unhuman eyes. After a moment he shuddered, wiping sweat from his face, and said, I'll show you. They moved through the quiet press in silence. The efforts at making camp they saw on all sides looked wooden, refugees and soldiers alike moving as automatons. No one bothered attempting to erect tents. They simply laid out their bedrolls on the flat rock. Children sat unmoving, watching with the eyes of old men and women. If the kids aren't able to muster the energy to play, you know it's a bad situation.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what you said a couple episodes about your boys always scuffling.
Yeah.
When they got some spare time, it's like,
give them 5 minutes of being stationary and it turns into something.
Right.
Undoubtedly.
He's touching me. He's touching me. He's touching me.
Yeah. The Wiccan camps were no better. There was no escape from what had been, from the images and remembered scenes that rose again and again, remorselessly before the mind's eye. Every frail, mundane gesture of normal life had shattered beneath the weight of knowledge. Yet there was anger, white-hot and buried deep. It had become the last fuel with any potency. Duerker thought, and so we move on, day after day, fighting every battle, those inside and those without, with an unyielding ferocity and determination. We are all in that place where Lull now lives, a place stripped of rational thought, trapped in a world without cohesion. Arriving at the vanguard, they came upon a scene. Coltane, Bolt, and Lull were present, and facing them in a ragged line 10 paces away were the last of the engineers. The engineers being the sappers.
Yes.
Coltane turned as Duerker and List approached. He said, Ah, this is well. I would have you witness this, historian. Duerker asked, What have I missed? Bolt grinned and said, Nothing. We've just managed the prodigious task of assembling the sappers. You'd think the battles with Chemist Rello were tactical nightmares. Anyway, here they are, looking like they're waiting to be ambushed, or worse. They finally pinned them down.
Is it like herding cats trying to round these guys up, I'm assuming?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Might even be worse
so
because
funny.
you could see the cats. These sappers had made themselves scarce, for sure.
Yes, they have. It's taken the whole book where they've been talked about forever. This is like the third band with Orson Welles. They talk about Orson Welles for the first third of the movie, and you never see him. He's presumed dead. Then he shows up. You're like, oh my gosh, there he is.
Mhm.
It's like, here they are. They are alive.
Duerker asked, "And are they, Uncle?" And this is in response to asking whether they're going to be ambushed.
Right.
They said they look like they're going to be ambushed. Bolt's grin broadened and he said, "Maybe." Coltain now stepped toward the assembled soldiers. He said, "Symbols of bravery and gestures of recognition can only ring hollow. This I know. Yet what else is left to me? 3 clan leaders have come to me, each begging to approach you men and women with an offer of formal adoption to their clan. Perhaps you are unaware of what such unprecedented requests reveal, or perhaps, judging by your expressions, you know. I felt need to answer on your behalf, for I know more of you soldiers than do most Wiccans, including those clan leaders, and they have each humbly withdrawn their requests." He was silent for a long moment. Coltain finally continued, "Nonetheless, I would have you know, they meant to honor you." Duerker thought, Coltain, even you do not understand these soldiers well enough. Those scowls you see arrayed before you certainly look like disapproval, disgust even, but then, when have you ever seen them smile? What an honor it must be for the Wiccans to ask to adopt you.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree because I love these guys. You and I want to be adopted into one of their clans. I know you do.
Man, I don't know if I could drink horse piss, Billy.
I don't think I could. I don't think I'd even have what it makes to do this, but I still want to be adopted by them for some strange reason. It's like when I watched Lawrence of Arabia. I want to go to the desert. I know I would not survive in the desert, but I want to see it. I still want to do it.
They certainly are an inspirational people. I'll say that. Their sacrifices that they're making, they really inspire me.
Yes, that's what it is. They inspire me as well.
Coltain said, "So I'm left with the traditions of the Malazan Empire. There were enough witnesses at the crossing to weave in detail the tapestry of your deeds, and among all of you, including your fallen comrades, the natural leadership of one was noted again and again. Without it, the day would have been truly lost." The sappers did not move, their scowls, if anything, deeper, more fierce. These guys are something else. I love that they don't seem to want recognition for their deeds. And this lack of attention-seeking behavior is incredibly appealing to me. The idea of doing what's right, because it is the right thing to do, without the expectation of recognition, is such a virtue.
Yeah, and I, like you, just love, I love every interaction we have with all these sappers / engineers, whatever you want to call them, is always, memorable because a lot of it is that they don't want to be known. They don't want to be seen. They just want to do their job, take care of business, because there is also a pride that these fellas seem to take and a job of creating chaos and destruction that saves. I mean, they take a great deal of pride in that. I mean, I get it. If that was your job, but the Malazan Sapper has elevated this to an art form. It's been pointed out before. What was it, last episode? Who was it? Bust said, who made them? Who made these? It's like, dude, what madness? Who made these sappers? It's like, dude, your boss. The crazy guy that you serve? Yeah, that guy.
It kind of makes you wonder whether people like this were even allowed in the military before the creation of the sappers.
Oh, absolutely not. These guys were kept under lock and key, or they were, if not, you know what I'm talking about. Most families these are the people that the families kept under lock and key because that's their crazy uncle. It's like that guy, the guy, that's the guy missing the fingers and the toes. Yeah, he likes to blow stuff up. That's my Uncle Fred. Yeah, he's been doing that since he's a kid. Something happened to him. He's just, and he's not happy until he's blowing stuff up, and it includes himself, apparently. So yeah. I have some uncles that fit that description that were just some crazy madmen that blew stuff up.
I've met quite a number of people native to Texas, especially when I was working in the oil industry in particular.
That's a Texan thing. That's
yeah.
That's a Texan thing. And so many, like when that explosion happened in West, you know about that, right? Remember when that happened?
That was a fertilizer factory,
the fertilizer
right?
plant, yes. Yeah. But they had one of the EMTs that had shown up. They checked into this guy for a long time because he had a bunch of info on him. It's like, and it took them a long time to realize, it's like, look, that's just how they roll in West when they got to get rid of a tree stump, and they do that everywhere else in the South too. It's just like, I'm sorry. It's just kind of how they roll. I mean,
get some tannerite. something.
Yeah, tannerite, blow some stuff. They have need for it on the farm, on the
Mhm.
ranch, and also when they're bored.
And
People with
also when they're
explosives,
bored, when it just happens to be sitting in the barn. Yeah.
and when they're bored and they have explosives around, yes, yes, it's that things get a little out of hand with these guys, and so that's how the
Mhm.
sapper was born. Somebody just thought, we need that guy. We need that guy's Uncle Fred. I remember him. We need people like him.
Some YouTube channel popped up in my feed, and these guys review guns. They had a video. They were talking about 1911s.
Mhm.
They had 6 different categories, and it was like the fancy one, the everyday carry, and then one of
Yes.
them was the barbecue one. And I was just thinking, that's is there anything more Texan than that?
Yeah. You just well, it should just be more called your everyday casual carry one. It's like
Well, they
you
had a
have your
category for that, but then the
oh
barbecue one,
oh
that's going to be the shiny one, or
oh, so it's real pretty. Okay, so you get to
probably, or
show it to everyone at the
something that
barbecue.
it has some type of novelty factor.
Yes, it's your pearl handle one.
Yeah,
It's the
I think it was. I think the one that they had was pearl handles.
there you go. There you go. I'm sorry. All I have. Oh, the only one I've got. What's
Called
bad?
it.
I'm gonna make you laugh even better because I have my 1911. It's a 1991 Desert Storm issue of the Army 1911 45. That's my carry piece.
Mhm.
So yes, I'm a Texan who does carry a 45. So
Okay.
I resemble that remark.
Nice. Coltane moved to stand before one man. Duerker recalled him well. A squat, hairless, immeasurably ugly sapper. His eyes thin slashes, his nose a flattened spread of angles and crooks. Audaciously, he wore fragments of armor that Duerker recognized as taken from a commander of the apocalypse, though the helm tied to his belt was something that could have adorned an antique shop in Darujistan. Another object that hung from his belt was difficult to identify, and it was a moment before Duerker realized he was looking at the battered remnant of a shield. Two reinforced grips behind a mangled plate-sized flap of bronze. A large blackened crossbow hung from one shoulder, so covered and entwined with twigs, branches, and other camouflage as to make it seem the man carried a bush. And this was the guy that responded to Duerker before the river crossing, when Duerker went to pass on the orders to the sappers and told them to get in, mix in with the refugees, and get across the river.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is
It's
the
not the
same
guy
guy.
that walked up. It's not the guy walking up carrying the head.
No,
Talking
it
to
is
that
not.
fellow.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Coltane said, I believe the time has come for a promotion. You are now a sergeant, soldier. The man said nothing, his eyes narrowing to the thinnest of slits. Bolt growled, I think a salute would be appropriate. One of the other sappers cleared his throat and nervously yanked at his mustache. Lull rounded on the man and said, Got something to say about this, soldier? The man muttered, Not much. Lull said, Out with it. The soldier shrugged and said, Well, only he was a captain not 2 minutes ago, sir. The fist just demoted him. That's Captain Mincer, sir. Commands the engineers. Or did. I gotta tell you,
That's amazing, dude.
it's comedy gold. I literally
Yes.
laughed out loud when I read this.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's
Oh,
so
I
good.
absolutely did.
Yeah.
It makes me, and you know what? This is why Erikson is so funny because he knows the knowledge of comedy is tragedy plus timing equals comedy, correct?
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to paste that in his own books.
Yeah.
He builds the comedy on some the stuff with Lull. Lull just 5 minutes before is, opining about some of the deepest philosophical questions on the face of the planet and in the face of their planet too. Then all of a sudden we're to this. It's like, how does he do that? I mean, how does he do that? It's just brilliant.
Yeah, a tragedy sandwich, if you will.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mincer finally spoke. And since I'm now a sergeant, I suggest the captaincy go to this soldier. He reached out and grabbed the woman beside him by the ear to drag her close. He said, What used to be my sergeant? Name's Bungle. Coltane stared a moment longer, then swung around and met Duerker's eyes with such comedic pleasure that Duerker's exhaustion was simply swept away, flash burned into oblivion. Coltane struggled to keep a straight face, and Duerker bit his lip in his own effort. His gaze caught on Lull, whose face showed the same struggle, even as the captain winked and mouthed 3 silent words. Sleight of hand. The question remained how Coltane would now play it. Composing his face into stern regard, he turned about again. He eyed Mincer, then the woman named Bungle. He said, "That will be fine, Sergeant. Captain Bungle, I would advise you to listen to your sergeant in all matters. Understood?" The woman shook her head. Mincer grimaced and said, "She's no experience with that, Fist. I never asked her advice, I'm afraid." Coltane said, "From what I have gathered, you never asked anyone's advice when you were captain." Mincer said, "Aye, that's a fact." Coltane went on, "Nor did you attend any staff briefings." Mincer said, "No, sir." Coltane asked, "And why was that?" Mincer shrugged. Captain Bungle spoke. "Beauty sleep, sir. That's what he always said." Bolt muttered, "Hood knows the man needs it." Coltane raised an eyebrow and asked, "And did he sleep, Captain, during those times?" Bungle said, "Oh, yes, sir. He sleeps when we march, too, sir. Sleeps while walking. I've never seen the like. Snoring away, sir, 1 foot in front of the other. A bag full of rocks on his back." Coltane asked, "Rocks?" Bungle said, "For when he breaks his sword, sir, he throws them, and there ain't a damn thing he can't hit." Mincer growled, "Wrong. That lapdog." Bolt seemed to choke, then spat in sympathy.
Have I ever mentioned my father's love of the Wolfenstein 3D game?
No.
You know the original 3D game when they were Ed and they came out of Mesquite?
Of course. I'll tell you what, not to interrupt your story, but I think we were in a service merchandise in the mall when I was young. So I was probably about 5th or 6th grade. This had to be 92. And they had Wolfenstein 3D on a computer, but they also had these lab tech speakers hooked up to it. And you never heard sound like this before. Because prior to that, you had a PC speaker that was making beep boop, noises. But these things were putting out the sound of the machine guns. Oh man, it was crazy. So yeah, sorry. Go ahead and tell me.
No. I appreciate that because my father still. I think he fired this up recently and played this because he always had such immense pleasure at shooting the German soldiers and especially the German shepherds.
The way they fall to the.
Yes, but I don't know what. And my father loves animals, but for some reason, I could hear that old man laughing. Oh my good gracious! Just them old dogs, he'd be cackling. He's a cat guy. He's a cat guy. You know that. He's still got cats to this day. So it's like shooting dogs. It's just, folks, I am just joking. My father would never shoot a dog, but he's joked about it, and it's kind of funny because he's such a kind man, and it's funny. And I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny shooting those dogs. It's the only game I know of that just has some dogs to be shot casually. Because they're monsters in the game. They're your enemy.
Oh, they'll get you. They'll get you.
They'll get you.
Yeah.
They'll chew you up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What a game that was back in the day.
So it goes back to Bolt and Mincer's dislike of that dog. It just kind of it just brings up my father's love of shooting German shepherds in that game. So, sorry.
Yeah, that Hengist roach dog is annoying the crap out of everybody, apparently.
Yes, it does.
Coltane had drawn his hands behind him, and Duerker saw them clench in a white-knuckled grip. As if sensing that attention, the Fist called out without turning, "Historian!" Duerker said, "I am here, Fist." Coltane asked, "You will record this?" Duerker said, "Oh, aye, sir, every blessed word." Coltane said, "Excellent. Engineers, you are dismissed." The group wandered off, muttering. One man clapped Mincer on the shoulder and received a blistering glare in return. Coltane watched them leave, then strode to Duerker, Bolt and Lull following. Bolt hissed, "Spirits below." Duerker smiled and said, "Your soldiers, Commander." Bolt said, "Aye," suddenly beaming with pride. He repeated, "Aye." Coltane said, "I did not know what to do." Lull grunted, "You played it perfectly, Fist. That was exquisite. No doubt already making the rounds as a hood-damned, full-blown legend. If they liked you before, they love you now, sir." Coltane remained baffled. He said, "But why? I just demoted a man for unsurpassed bravery." Lull said, "Return him to the ranks, you mean, and that lifted every one of them up. Don't you see that?" Coltane said, "But Mincer." Lull said, "Never had so much fun in his life, I'd bet. You can tell when they get even uglier. Hood knows. I can't explain it. Only sappers know a sapper's way of thinking and behaving, and sometimes not even them." Bolt said, "You have a captain named Bungle now, nephew. Think she'll be there in polish and shine next briefing?" Lull said, "Not a chance. She's probably packing her gear right now." Coltane shook his head and in a wondrous tone said, "They win. I am defeated." Dworker watched the three men walk away, still discussing what had just happened. He thought, not lies after all, tears and smiles, something so small, so absurd, the only possible answer. What a scene.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute core memory there.
Oh, big time. Big time core memory. Because, like I said, a lot of the core memories, with particular in this book, revolve around the humor, because the humor is always happening in the most atrocious spots in this story. It's like, good gracious, we need some humor here, and he does it. You're like, how does he do that? But it always sticks with me, and it does.
Yeah, maybe we should ask him about his philosophy on the humor or tragedy sandwich.
Mm-hmm. I agree, because I would be curious to hear, because I'm just always bowled over when he makes me laugh like this. I mean, it makes me laugh in the middle of everything else. It makes me go, wow. Everything is just wow.
Yeah. Dworker shook himself and looked around until he found List. He said, Corporal, I recall you had something to show me. List said, yes, sir, up ahead. Not far, I think. They came to the ruined tower before reaching the forward outlying pickets. A squad of Wiccans had commandeered the position, filling the ringed bedrock floor with supplies and leaving in attendance a lone, one-armed youth. List laid a hand on one of the massive foundation stones and said, Jagut. They lived apart, you know. No villages, no cities. Just single, remote dwellings, like this one. Dworker said, enjoyed their privacy, I take it. List said, they feared each other almost as much as they feared the Talani mass, sir. Dworker glanced over at the Wiccan youth. The lad was fast asleep. He thought, we're doing a lot of that these days, just dropping off. Dworker asked, how old? List said, not sure, 100, 2, maybe even 3. Dworker said, not years. List said, no, millennia. Dworker said, so this is where the Jagut lived. List said, the first tower, from here pushed back, then again, then again. The final stand, the last tower, is in the heart of the plain beyond the forest. Dworker repeated, pushed back. List nodded and said, each siege lasted centuries, the losses among the Talani mass staggering. Jagut were anything but wanderers. When they chose a place, his voice fell off. He shrugged. Dworker asked, was this a typical war, Corporal? List hesitated, then shook his head. He said, a strange bond, unique among the Jagut. When the mother was in peril, the children returned, joined the battle. Then the father. Things escalated. Dworker nodded and looked around. He said, she must have been special. Tight-lipped and pale, List pulled off his helm, ran a hand through his sweaty hair. He whispered, aye. Dworker asked, is she your guide? List said, no, her mate. Something made Dworker turn, as if in answer to a barely felt shiver of air. North through the trees, then above them, his mind struggled to encompass what he saw. A column, a spear-lit gold, rising. List muttered, Hood's breath, what is that? A lone word thundered through Dworker, flooding his mind, driving out every thought, and he knew with utter certainty the truth of it. The single word that was answer to List's question. Shaik. Imagine seeing that from their perspective. Enough to make your stomach drop, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like seeing an Imperial Star Destroyer enter the system.
Yeah. I think you said you hadn't seen Rogue One, right?
Oh, I've seen Rogue One, yeah.
Okay.
But that's the one where they got the plans, right? Is that where they got the plans
yes.
for the... Yeah, that's a good movie. I need to rewatch it. That's a good movie.
What comes to mind when you said the Star Destroyer was when they had that Star Destroyer hovering over the city where they were pulling the Kyber crystals out. Remember they were
yeah.
Just seeing it hovering there, such an ominous presence.
Yeah, that's quite a threat. Yeah, it's very threatening, especially when he knows it's Shaik. I mean, it's got to be that same gut-wrenching, like you just said, your stomach drop, gut-wrenching, same thing. I mean, it's just, seeing that's like, whoa, what are we seeing here? This can't be good.
Right.
It's already bad enough. And what's bad? It's already bad enough for these folks as it is. It's like, oh man, crap. What now? It's like, what now?
Definitely. Like they need a reminder that there's a deity that has it out for them. You know, the armies of the apocalypse are bad enough, but some otherworldly presence? Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be very disheartening.
For sure. We go to Kalam on the Ragstopper. Kalam sat in his gloomy cabin, inundated with the sound of hammering waves and shrieking wind. Ragstopper shuddered with every remorseless crash of the raging seas, the room around Kalam pitching in, it seemed, a dozen directions at once. Somewhere in their wake, a fast trader battled the same storm, and her presence, announced by the lookout only minutes before the green and strangely luminescent cloud rolled over them, gnawed at Kalam, refusing to go away. He thought, the same fast trader we'd seen before. Was the answer a simple one? While we squatted in that shithole of a home port, she'd been calmly shouldering the Imperial pier at Falar. No special rush in resupplying when you have a shore leave worth the name. But that did not explain the host of other details that plagued Kalam. Details that, each on their own, rang a minor note of discord, yet together they created a cacophony of alarm in Kalam. Blurred passages of time, perhaps born of the man's driving aspiration to complete this voyage, at war with the interminable reality of day upon day, night upon night, the very sameness of such a journey. He thought, but no, there's more than just a conflict of perspective. The hourglasses, the dwindled stores of food and fresh water, the captain's tortured hints of a world amiss aboard this damned ship. And that fast trader, it should have sailed past us long ago. Sulky Lan, a mage, he stinks of it, yet a sorcerer who could twist an entire crew's mind so thoroughly. That sorcerer would have to be a high mage. Not impossible, just highly unlikely among Mebra's covert circle of spies and agents. There was no doubt in Kalam's mind that Elan had woven about himself a web of deceit, inasmuch as it was in such a man's nature to do so, whether necessary or not. Yet which strand should Kalam follow in his quest for the truth? He thought, time. How long has this journey been? Trade winds where none should be. Now a storm, driving us ever southeastward. A storm that had therefore not come from the ocean wastes, as the immutable laws of the sea would demand, but from the Falari Isles. In its dry season, a season of unbroken calm. So who plays with us here? And what role does Sulk Elan have in this game, if any? Growling, Kalam rose from his bunk, grabbing in mid-swing his satchel from its hook, then made his rocking way to the door. The hold was like a siege tower under a ceaseless barrage of rocks. Mist filled the salty, close air, and the keel was awash in shin-deep water. There was no one about, every hand committed to the daunting task of holding Ragstopper together. Shin-deep water. That's alarming. Do you think they've had to add more men to the bilge pump duty?
Oh, I would assume so. It's probably all bilge duty right now.
I would think they would have had some repairs when they were in the home port. At least something.
Well, remember when he got on board, he was even talking about he couldn't even find a dry spot on board when they were at port.
Yeah, true.
They were talking about there was always 3 men on the pump. That was even before they left.
Maybe it's the usual.
We don't know enough about this guy and Ragstopper.
Yeah, because this thing belly flopped on another ship. I would think that would have some effect. The Marines were having to stuff Rags in the cracks.
Yeah.
Kalam cleared a space and dragged a chest free. He rummaged in his satchel until his hand found it enclosed on a small, misshapen lump of stone. He drew it out and set it on the chest top. It did not roll off. Indeed, it did not move at all. Kalam unsheathed the dagger, reversed his grip, then drove the iron pommel down on the stone. It shattered. A gust of hot, dry air washed over Kalam. He crouched lower. He said, "Quick! Quick, Ben, you bastard! Now's the time!" No voice reached him through the storm's incessant roar. Kalam thought, I'm beginning to hate mages. He said, "Quick, Ben, damn you!" The air seemed to waver, like streams of heat rising from a desert floor. A familiar voice tickled Kalam's ears. "Any idea the last time I've had a chance to sleep? It's all gone to Hood's shithole over here, Kalam. Where are you, and what do you want? And hurry up with it. This is killing me." Kalam said, "I thought you were my shaved knuckle in the hole, damn you." Quick Ben said, "You and Unta? The palace? I never figured..." Kalam cut him off. "Thanks for the vote of confidence. No, I'm not in the Hood cursed palace, you idiot. I'm at sea." Quick Ben said, "Aren't we all? You've just messed up, Kalam. I can't do this more than once." Kalam said, "I know. So I'm on my own when I get there. Fine. Nothing new in that. Listen, what can you sense of where I am at this moment? Something's gone seriously awry on this ship, and I want to know what, and who's responsible." Quick Ben said, "Is that all? Okay, give me a minute." Kalam waited. The hair rose on his neck as he felt Quick Ben's presence fill the air on all sides, a probing emanation that Kalam knew well. Then it was gone. Quick Ben said, Kalam asked, "What does that mean, Quick?" Quick Ben said, "You're in trouble, friend." Kalam asked, Lacine? Quick Ben said, not sure. Not directly. That ship stinks of a warren, Kalam. One of the rarest among mortals. Been confused lately, friend? Kalam explained, I was right then. Who? Quick Ben said, someone, maybe on board, maybe not. Maybe sailing a craft within that warren, right alongside you, only you'll never see it. Anything valuable aboard? Kalam asked, you mean apart from my hide? Quick Ben said, yes, apart from your hide, of course. Kalam said, only a despot's ransom. Quick Ben said, and someone wants it getting somewhere fast. And when it gets there, that someone wants every damn person on board to forget where that place is. That's my guess, Kalam. I could be very wrong, though. Kalam said, that's a comfort. You said you're in trouble over there? Whiskey Jack? Dujek? The squad? Quick Ben said, scraping through so far. How's Fiddler? Kalam said, no idea. We decided on separate ways. Quick Ben said, oh no, Kalam. Kalam said, aye, Tremorlore. Hood's breath. It was your idea, Quick. Quick Ben said, assuming the house was at peace. Sure, it should have worked. Absolutely, I think. But something's gone bad there. Every warren's lit up, Kalam. Chanced on a deck of dragons lately? Kalam said, no. Quick Ben said, lucky you. Realization struck Kalam with a sharply drawn breath. He said, the path of hands. Quick Ben said, the path... Oh, Kalam, if you knew... Kalam said, we didn't know a damn thing, Quick. After a moment, Quick Ben muttered, they might have a chance. With sorry... Kalam interrupted, Apslar, you mean. Quick Ben said, whatever. Let me think, damn you. Kalam growled, oh, terrific. More schemes. Plans within plans.
Yes. Yes, ever. Always with that fellow.
Quick Ben said, I'm losing hold here, friend. Too tired. Lost too much blood yesterday, I think, Mallet says. That doesn't sound good.
No, it does not.
Yeah. Kind of makes me wonder where in the timeline this is.
Is this happening at the same time as 3?
Yeah, as Memories of Ice. This is happening at some point along there. We just don't know what event is coinciding with this.
Right. Yeah, I can't think offhand, but it's been a while.
Quick Ben's voice trailed away. Cool mist seeped back in around Kalam. Quick Ben was gone. Kalam thought, and that's that. On my own in truth now. Fiddler, oh, you bastard, we should have guessed. Figured it out. Ancient gates. Tremorlore. He did not move for a long time. Finally he sighed, wiped the top of the chest, removing the last of the crushed rock from its damp surface, and rose. The captain was awake, and he had company. Salk Elan grinned as Kalam entered the cramped room. Elan said, we were just talking about you, partner, knowing how set you get in your mind, and wondering how you'd take the news. Kalam said, all right, I'll bite. What news? Elan said, this storm. We're being blown off course. A long way. Kalam asked, meaning? Elan said, seems we'll be making for a different port once it's spent. Kalam said, not unta. Elan said, oh, eventually, of course. Kalam's gaze fell to the captain. He looked unhappy, but resigned. Kalam conjured a map of Quantali in his mind, studied it a moment, then sighed. Malaz City, the island. Elan said, never seen that legendary cesspool before. I can't wait. I trust you'll be generous enough to show me all the sights, friend. Kalam stared at the man, then smiled and said, count on it, Salk Elan. All right, we're going to stop there, and we'll finish out the chapter next week. For standout moments, the casualty numbers from the Day of Pure Blood, they were quite shocking.
Yes. Yeah, we lost a huge swath of the Chain of Dogs with that.
The burial practices of the Talani Mass stuck out to me.
It does, and you know, it's kind of funny. I seem to kind of future remember some of them doing something similar, but I just forgot that Hood wouldn't or couldn't collect their souls as part of their vow, or, you know, that part of it, just leaving them to stay where they are, especially if they lost bits so much so they couldn't reconstitute and they're just stuck like wherever they are.
Yeah.
That's kind of a weird thought.
Mm-hmm. I forgot about Hood not being able to collect their souls as well.
Wow.
Coltane finally pinning down the sappers, that entire conversation.
Absolutely. Absolute brilliance, that entire conversation. And core memory, as we said.
Mm-hmm. For me to laugh out loud like that, it really got me good. It's just so heartwarming.
It is. And it's, well, that's the knowledge of him as the writer. We talk, you know, it just, we need that little uplift here and there. He knows when to deliver some of that stuff, because it's like we need some here and there. You need some of that this to lift your boat because it's pretty heavy right now, and it's gonna get heavier.
Captain Mincer getting promoted to sergeant, and then his response is saying his old sergeant should be the new captain. Oh, Colton's response, beautiful.
Hey, I love I can imagine the look on his face as he turns around, that that look of like surprise, but smiling, like trying hard not to be seen smiling. You know,
I find myself in that position with the kids sometimes because some of the stuff they say, I'm trying to get them in trouble, but I was a boy once, and some of this stuff's pretty hilarious.
Right. Yeah.
Trying to keep it together while you're trying to get them in trouble, you know,
it's hard. I can imagine that's very hard.
Yeah. And then that bag of rocks that Mincer carried on his back and his inability to hit the Hengi's roach dog. Bolt's response to that, where he's choking.
Yeah.
Man, it's great.
Yeah, and agreed, and it's like a mutual, like, I sympathize. Mutual sympathy between Bolt and that guy.
Yeah. Then Shaik's spear becoming visible to Duiker and List, and, you know, the rest of the chain of dogs as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's got to be just a huge, just a huge morale breaker. And it's like because especially if they've made it this far and they got to be knowing they're like, well, because there's probably some people there that are thinking, we may make it. We're going to make it.
Yeah.
You know, we ain't that far.
Then you see this supernatural occurrence happening.
Yeah, that's got to be very bad. Very bad.
Mm-hmm.
They lost their morale roll.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes. Probably need to do a sanity check after that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, imagine if you're playing a sapper and you always have to do a sanity check whenever you do some crazy stuff.
Well, part of it is that I think that they do some of their best work while they're out of their minds.
Yeah, maybe there's a mechanic where the crazier they are, the more effective they are.
That could be. But you got to keep them locked up until you cut them loose.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't hurt y'all. You know, you hurt your team, you know.
And then finally, hearing from Quick Ben. It's been a long time, so it was good to hear from him.
It is. And what's this about losing the blood? Happens when you run with a rough crowd, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm curious what took place to cause that.
I know, me too. Because I love Quick. Quick and Kamraun are two of my favorite, man.
Their interactions with each other, they're like brothers.
Yes. Very much so. Very wonderfully very much transmitted to us that feeling. Another great Erikson thing. That love for each other, the band of brothers kind of thing, bond of brotherhood.
Yeah. All right, Billy, great job tonight.
Hey, great episode, brother.
Yeah. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
Just enjoying this as things get ratcheted up, knowing that we are so close. Man, we are getting into the home stretch area. We're getting into reel 3.
Yeah, there's some big stuff.
Yeah.
Coming.
Ooh, yes, coming big time. Yeah. Looking forward to it. Been enjoying it.
Definitely. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.